Hi, Jose. Welcome to the Leanpub launch video for the art of prompt testing. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your evening to do this video for us. I was wondering if you could just take a moment to talk a little bit about yourself and your book and what it's about.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. A short version, a few words. This is a book for testers, written by a tester, in which trying to explain how LLM-based software can be tested. So we know about ChatGPT, other large language models are coming, and in my vision, I think this is going to change how applications are developed.
Yeah, definitely.
Regarding testing, something new is needed, and this is what the book is about.
Yeah, and so for anyone listening, I'm sure everybody's heard about, ChatGPT, which is a sort of like chat interface,
Sure.
Language model and stuff like that. That's sort of like exploded in popularity, and Google's got its own, and everybody's going to have their own thing. And one of the applications that people are using this for is software, is writing software and sort of things like that. And what Jose is talking about is prompt testing. So you prompt these models with sort of sort of text kind of based kind of questions, basically. But how do you go about testing this is like a really interesting issue for software testers and for anybody sort of who's using it.
Exactly. If you think about the traditional software we have until now, that you can expect for an input a certain output, and this gives us a lot of space to test and to do some assertions and so on. But now, because the nature of the prompt itself, there is natural language, we have a lot of variability in the inputs, but still we need to assert the output. So this is the idea in the book, that how can we deal with this new paradigm, so to speak, or this new flavor of software.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's a really interesting way of putting it too, that, the sort of like typical, as it were, kind of like software testing input, if you're testing a piece of software, was sort of some code, basically. Mm-hmm. But now what's going to be happening is you can be testing it with sort of just natural language. And that introduces a whole new set of opportunities, but also kind of problems and kind of fuzziness around what we're actually doing.
Yes, exactly. One of the main problems we see now is what is called hallucination. So you get an answer from the model that you cannot trust. That is the truth 100%. So there's some supervision is needed. In the book, we propose a way to test this properly. So to make sure that this, let's say, wrong behavior is limited, or at least that when it happens, we can detect it during testing.
And is that involving the use of Langchain?
So in the book, at the moment of writing, the Langchain is the framework that I thought it will enable all this integration of these models in the traditional software. But as we discussed before, I will expect that it will evolve, and then in future we can extend this book with some more practical cases and maybe new frameworks that I use. But in few words, with Langchain, it will enable whatever model you're using to execute some code that is part of your application.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You're mentioning one thing that Jose is mentioning is that one of the reasons he's using Leanpub as one of the platforms for publishing his book is that we make it easy to update your book. And as these technologies get updated, Jose's book needs to be updated, which is exactly what he's doing. So if you're interested in the book, and if you're interested in what Jose's talking about, the book's going to be updated as things evolve, which is just a really fascinating thing. And that's one of the reasons we were so glad to see your book show up on Leanpub. I mean, we're using AI kind of stuff ourselves. Doing sort of lots of heavy work and seeing this sort of ecosystem grow of programmers trying to help each other out as these technologies come out and evolve is just really fascinating. Well, Jose, it goes against my nature to have short conversations, but that's what these book launch videos are all about. Maybe we'll have a longer one at some point. But thank you very much for taking some time out of your evening to do this video.
Thank you for the chance. Yes.
Yeah, and thank you very much for using Leanpub as one of the platforms for your book.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks.